coming out for this Green Home event. It's the first one of the year. Really excited to get going with this year's programming. This is the Green Catwalk. We do this every year. It's kind of fun. It's a little bit different than what our normal program is. We have 6 wonderful speakers. We're going to be talking about like a range of projects, range of industries. Just real quick, I wanted to talk about how GreenHomeNYC is an all-volunteer nonprofit. We've been doing this for over 20 years, putting on several different types of programming. We have the forums, which we're here tonight. We also do green career workshops, and then we do green building tours as well. And coming up in March, we're going to have a forum on sustainable food systems, and then Green Careers is doing a resume workshop in February. Let's see. Getting on to tonight's event. You guys are pretty familiar with the speakers. When they come up, they'll do a brief introduction of themselves, so I don't want to waste too much time going over their bios and all that. But with that said, I think I'm going to invite Megan up, and we're just going to get this evening started. So, Megan.
So nice to be here tonight. Thank you so much. So pleased to, I volunteered with Green Homes probably 8 years ago, so it's wonderful to be back here as a speaker. My name is Nordgrén. I have been working in environmental advocacy and policy for a very long time now, several decades, for a number of nonprofits, at the city level, federal level, and then also working on UN International Waters projects for a number of years, which was wonderful. But then I had kids who were wonderful. But then when they entered school, the New York City public school system, a Title I school, which for those of you who don't know, aren't familiar with the designation, that means that a high percentage of the population of the students are at or below the poverty level. My kids would come home and say, "Mama, science is boring. I hate science." And my husband, who's an engineer, and I would cringe and say, "What? Science is the most fun part of the day. How can that possibly be?" So I was very pleased to come on board with New York Sunworks over 6.5 years ago, watching it grow around the corner from my kids' school, and New York Sunworks built the first rooftop greenhouse in a public school 14 years ago. But it started out as the science barge, which some of you might have seen, although a number of you look like you might be too young to have seen it. But it was a science barge that was in the Hudson River, and it was used to kind of show what the future of New York City could look like, the future of farming could be like, using captured rainwater and solar power, in a very forward-thinking way, to grow food hydroponically. So hydroponics, in case you don't know, is growing food with water and nutrients rather than with soil. So you can do it anywhere in a very urban-friendly, space-friendly way. So from that barge, which suddenly that future came to pass much quickly. From that barge, the company Gotham Greens grew out of, and Bright Farms, and now we have many vertical farm companies, hydroponic farming companies here in the city, in the New Jersey region, and all across the country. But we took that model of using the hydroponic technology and brought it into the public school classroom, recognizing that this is a really incredible way to teach students systems thinking, teach students about sustainability, and originally as a way to sneak climate change education into schools before teachers and principals might have been so comfortable with it. So we are a nonprofit. So we build these farm classrooms in public schools. We do work with a few independent schools as well, but primarily we do focus on public Title I schools here in the city. We are in the 5 boroughs, and we are working in kindergarten through 12th grade, and we use these farm systems to teach science, sustainability, climate education, and of course with the added benefit of learning about nutrition and growing hundreds of pounds of vegetables right in the public school classroom. And our vision is a generation of environmental innovators who are empowered to create solutions to global climate challenges. Since this first rooftop opened, we are now, the foremost comprehensive climate education program, definitely in the region, and we're kind of thinking anywhere because we haven't seen anything bigger. Reaching over 300 schools. We've built over 300 farm classrooms in schools in the 5 boroughs, and reaching over 120,000 students every year. And this is growing literally, the demand is great, and we already have funding to be in another 90 schools this year. So we're going to be in over 20% of the New York City public school system this year, which is very exciting, and bringing in this rich hands-on farming. So this is our original greenhouse, the first rooftop greenhouse in the New York City public school. However, this is not feasible for most schools. So instead, most of our projects look like this. Our partnerships look like this. So we bring in this commercial grade hydroponic technology. These systems are the same ones that our friends at Gotham Greens are using to grow greens commercially. So with these, you can grow leafy greens and herbs in 6 to 8 weeks. With the vine crop system, you can grow peas, beans, cucumbers, eggplants, tomatoes, anything that vines, and it'll grow almost all the way up to the ceiling, all year round. And then tower system is for growing strawberries. We had a soil strawberry farmer brought into one of our labs by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and he was blown away that our strawberries were as good or better than his. So we were very excited about that, and they've been grown by elementary school students. So this is what it looks like. So it's very exciting, inviting, engaging for the students, and the students are learning the work of the farming. They're learning how to measure pH, learning about how to measure electrical conductivity levels, how to add nutrients. All the steps from seed to harvest. But we also bring in worm composting, so that they're able to compost all the leftover lettuce pieces and create beautiful rich compost to put in their soil gardens or their tree pits or their house plants to help complete the systems thinking. And some of our schools also have big fish tanks where they can grow tilapia, and the waste from the tilapia feeds the plants that are growing on top, and they learn the nitrogen cycle through this. But and we use things like integrative pest management, beneficial insects instead of chemicals when pests arise. As we do, problems arise, and we work, to ensure that the students recognize that problems are opportunities to solve and create new paths forward in all areas of life. We do, bring this technology into the science program so that we teach the science teachers how to use our curriculum, how to run the systems, how to be the farmers, and then we provide long-term support. So we have full, rich K-12 curriculum, and we also recently started partnerships at 2 community colleges here in the city. So we're going up to the K-14 space. We did recently also create a workforce development program, which is relevant to the green careers piece, so that students who might not have seen a path to a 4-year college, or might have a path to a 4-year college, but might be, see new opportunities for a different type of learning. So they get exposure to in-depth farming and the science behind it, but also job readiness skills. And we've rolled this out to 6 high schools across the city, and there is tremendous demand for workforce programs in the schools that provide hands-on training. So just some of the many wonderful impacts of the program, including improved attendance. We get reports that students are so proud of the plants that they're growing. and nurturing, all the way from seed to harvest. That we work in transfer high schools, which are schools for students who have left the traditional high school system or might be older and coming back to get their degree. That students are more willing to come to school on days they're going to visit the lab, so they can run in and measure the plant, see how it's grown. Girls in STEM, we keep getting reports from some of our female students that it's a safe space for them to explore STEM topics in a way that they might not have been comfortable with, in the chemistry, physics setting, and then so much more. But this is our program, so we are growing extremely quickly. We've gotten wonderful support from elected officials. They see that it's an incredibly cost-effective, rich science program and a great photo op because the labs look beautiful. So we've been able to grow this soon to over 350 schools. But we want to, the demand is great, and we're working to diversify our funding. So if any companies out here, since you're all like-minded, wonderful companies that are here in this room, and you're looking to support a wonderful nonprofit, I have a card here. I'll just give it to you. We have a youth conference every year too. Rooftop of the Javits Center, where we bring over 900 students together to present the research that they're doing, on climate change, on sustainability, in the farm classrooms. So, it's a great opportunity to sponsor and fun to see. I don't know if anybody wants to come explore. It's really, really spectacular to see the kids engaged in this way. So, my time is just about up, but you can please follow us, check us out. We have really awesome pictures of kids with plants and good tidbits on Instagram about urban farming. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. Happy to speak further. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Joanna. I'm from Nantum, and we are focused on increasing energy efficiency in the commercial real estate space. So I run our product team there, so I'm always building new software to help commercial real estate owners and operators. And we think that, reducing carbon emissions starts with efficiency and reduction in use, at Nantum. So why would commercial owners and operators care about their energy use and sustainability? Regulation is probably the biggest reason, and then secondly, we have corporate net zero goals coming out, and finally, we're in a pretty tight real estate market, so owners and operators are really looking for any way to reduce their costs, so it's become very real to them very quickly. We at Nantum think this is a big problem. I'm sure some of you have seen these statistics before, so I won't harp on them, but especially in New York City, where we have a really intensive built environment. The legislation we're primarily concerned with at Nantum is building performance standards. We talk about these all the time. The one here in New York is Local Law 97, which sets a greenhouse gas emissions limit for all kinds of buildings, not just commercial. And Boston, DC have laws as well that we can help our customers comply with. And there's a ton of other municipalities that are exploring this type of legislation, as well as federal goals. President Biden has announced that by 2045, that all government buildings should have a net zero goal, which many of us in this room probably think is a little too far away, but that's not the topic of this conversation. This is a quick visual of who has performance standards in the US. You can see they're concentrated around metropolitan areas, so kind of going along with the narrative that more intensive built environment, more emissions to be saved from buildings. And in New York City, with Local Law 97, in the past 5 years, since it was passed, and now this is the first year of compliance, it's 2024, we saw an increase of compliance of 40% among buildings. And that's really exciting because now there's kind of speculation that they could lower the 2030 limit even lower to make it more aggressive. But at Nantum, we work with buildings like this, big commercial spaces, and a lot of those are not going to be compliant for 2030, so they have a lot of work to do. this is a really high level basic look at what does it mean to like be compliant, right? First you have to have your data, establish your benchmarks so that you can understand your goals, and then you start taking actions, and we're again more on the efficiency side of things, so help you reduce your use day after day, measure results, and ultimately they have to report these results if they're public companies, and then of course the municipalities as well, for all buildings, not just public corporations. So I'll slow down here a little bit. So this is for a building here in New York City, not too far from here. This is our greenhouse gas emissions app in Phantom. So the data in the two tables are pretty much, they're the same data. This is just a table view and a chart, but what we do is we mark your limits. So based on your occupancy class, your carbon coefficients, we calculate the limit for the year. So that's the red line, and then the gray line is your projected emissions for the year. So we do that using like a total energy calculation. That's one of our big parts of our system, is gathering all your energy data across different commodities and helping you kind of visualize your total usage, including renewables. And then we're in January, so the blue line is quite small, but that's your actual emissions. So we'll calculate those daily. And then in terms of like what limits you can use, it's really flexible. So we'll have imported any municipal laws that have passed, any limits that we can calculate for you, and then you can add, any custom limit that might be applicable to your company, or even if you're curious to see just how you stack up with other buildings. And this is another view of the app. So the top table is showing some key metrics for the 2024 limit. So this building is compliant for 2024, but they're not so compliant for 2030. So, over $1 million, that's a pretty big line item on an operational budget. So, companies do care about this because it's getting real, right? And the other interesting thing, this is probably my favorite part of the app, is seeing how much of your emissions are coming from what utility, right? So like you can imagine this building is probably using a ton more electric, but steam is much dirtier, so there you go. They should probably think about reducing their steam use, which is something that we help them with this. So this is what we care about in terms of energy efficiency and reduction, is the demand curve. This is a lot easier to do in a commercial building because, you can see sort of people coming to work and people leaving work. And it's really simple. It's a simple concept, like shorten your operational day and you'll save energy, right? But it's not so easy because, in a building like this, there might be, 15 tenants with big leases that, if you dip below a certain temperature band, that's not okay. They might, and especially in a market like this, nobody wants to lose a tenant, right? So if we do this wrong, they'll just shut it off. So the yellow line is their original demand curve. The red line is projected occupancy. So this might be real because it might be past, but we can also project occupancy for the day based on your building schedule. And then the blue is the optimized demand curve for the building, so for the day. And you can see like this building could probably even save a little bit more on their startup, but that's something that we would do over time. So we do use AI, ML, sounds very buzzwordy, but it does get smarter over time as we see the behavior of your building. So, and then after that, what happens, we help you measure it. So we're always updating how we sort of help our customers measure and verify the results of using our system, because we operate, with big corporate owners and operators, and they want to know what the ROI is, but also they need these numbers to report back for compliance purposes too. So showing it in kilowatt hour reduction, dollars, and ultimately greenhouse gas. So there's a long way to go in corporate real estate, but we do feel like there's a huge opportunity for reduction. That's sort of our angle. So this is an interesting report from the GSA to see that energy management can save them quite a bit of money. And then our flagship customer, Green, they also have a report of And that's interesting because here we're in New York, that's where all their buildings are. So yeah, we've saved them a lot of money and also allowed them to become a lot more compliant, which is our primary mission. So I think that's all I got. Yeah, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm super excited to be a part of tonight's panel. My name is Jennifer Maldonado, and I work with Kinetic Communities Consulting, also known as KC3. And folks in the back, let me know if I should speak louder. Feel free to call me out whenever. Okay. And just to share a bit more of a background as to what KC3 is. KC3 is an organization that really works with and amplifies energy equity and disadvantaged communities that in order to access clean and affordable energy. And in doing so, we partner with local government as well as the private sector, as well as with nonprofit organizations, and really just amplifying energy sector for your everyday New Yorker. And just put a bit of disclaimer here. Any program is a big program to pack in just 10 minutes, so I'll do my best, but if folks have any questions, I'm happy to answer the Q&A portion. On to the next slide. Oh, just a brief bio as well. In the organization, my role, I work as a sustainability consultant with a team of 2 other colleagues on what is called the Affordable Multifamily Energy Efficiency Program, otherwise known as AMEEP. Okay. So AMEEP is a joint effort between NYSERDA and the public utilities. So you'll see here some logos. I'm sure folks are familiar with some downstate utilities, that being Con Edison and National Grid. There's also utilities in the upstate region, so Central Hudson, as well as Orange and Rockland. And really the main takeaway of the AMEEP program is that it is open to buildings that are maintained as affordable housing in New York State. By enrolling in this program, buildings can experience benefits, which I'll just call out here, just to name a few, one being reducing their greenhouse gas and carbon emissions, as well as reducing the energy cost for the customer. You're also drawing in potential health and safety benefits, so for example, improving your air quality, improving pest management. You're also reducing the energy delivery needed by the utility. You're also reducing energy use, thereby increasing building efficiency. And then you're also improving tenant comfort, which I feel folks, it's something that folks may not really think about or may skip over folks' head. Why do I say that? Because if you're a building owner or a property manager, when it comes to energy efficiency for your building, the first priority that you're thinking about is how can I offset costs related to my building maintenance and upgrades, right? But who inhabits your buildings? Your tenants, right? So let's say, for example, if your building happens to have leaky windows, comes around winter season, your boilers are up and running, however, tenants are coming to you complaining that their apartment's freezing. Why is that? Because you have leaking drafty windows and you're allowing cold air to seep through. So by participating in a program like AMEEP, you're really just accessing and enacting these upgrades to your building, but in doing so, you're really just improving the quality of life of your tenants, which I think is something that's important to consider and keep in mind of. And then lastly, you're also helping your building align with state and local environmental policies. So buildings that come to us may happen to fall under, let's say, Local Law 97, which I'm sure is a hot topic for as of late. I'm sure folks are also familiar with Local Law 97, as was mentioned in the last presentation. So buildings over a certain square footage have to comply with the city set forth emissions on the greenhouse gas emissions. So when it comes to a program like AMEEP, we do offer incentives for upgrades that buildings have to enact in order to meet compliance. So it's kind of like a win-win situation. Not only are you helping your building meet the city's requirements, but you're also getting money for doing the work. Going on to the next slide. Alrighty, so qualifying factors. These are the main requirements that buildings have to keep in mind in order to confirm whether or not they qualify for AMEEP. So first and foremost, they must be a utility customer. So you must have an electric and gas account from any of the utilities that I mentioned earlier. Building characteristics. So keep in mind, as long as you have a building that is multifamily designated and is 5 units or over, you can qualify for AMEEP. Affordable housing requirements. Essentially, that means that this program is open to affordable housing buildings, not market rate. Affordable housing defined by the program is if your building is where your building has at least 25% of the total units, is meeting no more than 80% of the area median income, otherwise known as the AMI. measure eligibility. That just lets you know that, hey, if you had applied for, let's say, a boiler replacement and they're previously through any other program and had received incentives for doing so, unfortunately you cannot apply to Amy for the same measure this time around. Installation timeline. Essentially, if you're applying to Amy, you must keep in mind that you have to have your upgrade completed within a set time period in order to receive incentives for your building project. And then lastly, extent of renovation / intended use. Essentially, that means that your building must remain as multifamily housing. If, let's say, in the future you're planning to change the zoning of your building to, let's say, commercial use, unfortunately you won't qualify. Next slide. Key components. Again, Amy program's a lot to unpack here, so just offering folks some main takeaways. So the Amy program is designed by pathways. There's 2 pathways that folks can apply through. There's the comprehensive pathway and non-comprehensive pathway. Non-comprehensive is ideal for smaller buildings, whereas comprehensive is ideal for larger buildings. Other thing to keep in mind is that incentives are either fixed or based on energy savings. So the type of incentives that you'll receive is depending on the pathway that you're applying for. Another cool thing about Amy is that it offers incentives for a wide array of measures pertaining to your building's electrical, gas, or HVAC systems. And also financing is available. So buildings that come to us most often than not are in need of financial assistance, perhaps due to the fact that their building has low reserves or they are in financial distress. And so pretty much we offer guidance and sharing resources, whether it be a loan or a grant that the building may qualify for, depending on the building's financial standing. And an energy audit may be a requirement. Why do I say that? Is because, again, depending on the pathway that you're applying for, if a building does not have an energy audit completed, they will have to complete one in order to proceed with the Amy program. And here, this slide just giving you all a high-level overview of the program implementation. So just showing some steps here from initial engagement with buildings through project completion. So the first step here is outreach. So KC3, we are subcontracted in order to really act as an outreach liaison for the program. So we work with community-based organizations, also known as CBOs, to perform cold and warm outreach to buildings that may either qualify for the program or have even reached out to us saying, hey, I'm interested in applying for Amy, help me out here. Once we vet these buildings, the next step is verifying program eligibility. So we ask buildings to submit affordable housing verification as well as their utility bills. Once program eligibility is confirmed, we then move on to the next phase, which is technical assistance. This portion here, again, depending on the program pathway, if buildings need to complete an energy audit, we help them in that process. And then from that phase, we move on to contractor assignment. By this point in time, we really need to develop the scope of work. So we finalize, like, hey, what is the building applying for in terms of upgrades? We also help the building go through bid procurement and assigning a contractor to the building's project. And then from there, we move on to installation. Essentially, the contractor that is assigned will complete the building project and enact the upgrades. And then from there, we move on to incentive closeout. Essentially, the contractor is submitting the documentation required by the program, saying like, hey, I did the work, inspections are involved just to certify that the work was done appropriately. And then if everything is approved and passes, the project is considered completed and will be closed out. And then by then, finally, the building will receive their incentive in the form of a check for their project. And really this visual is, again, a high-level overview of the main components that of the program processes that take place from when we first speak to that building, whether it be the building owner, the staff, or the property manager, through the very end of closing out their project. And that is all. I hope folks have a better understanding of the Amy program. If y'all have questions, more than happy to answer in the Q&A portion. And I shared my email here if folks want to reach out, or feel free to give us a follow on Instagram, Kinetic Communities. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My little timer on. Brian Elder here. I'm the Director of Business Development for a company called Gradient. We are a San Francisco-based startup. We feel like we made a better mousetrap. It's a heat pump that has the benefits and efficiencies of a typical mini split, but the ease of installation of a standard window AC. What
Use
am I?
that key, the left key.
Which one?
Just be using, oh, you use spacebar too.
Oh, spacebar, okay. So, where are we headed as an industry? We anticipate tremendous growth in the HVAC sector in general, in particular with ACs. Climate change and global warming, we anticipate there being up to 4 billion more ACs by 2050. So, from our point of view, as a socially conscious, inclusive company, we want to make sure that we can participate, be at the forefront of this growth, but do so in a way that is climate friendlier and obviously inclusive. A couple of ways we can do that. We can use better refrigerants. We use, which I'll get into in a second, more climate friendly. And want to make sure that the ACs are actually heat pumps so that in the process of warming and cooling, we can actually decarbonize buildings. And finally, we want to make sure that the ACs, that these units are smart, so they're participating in any sort of smart grid expansion and deployable in multiple communities throughout the country. So a little bit about Gradiant as a company, a bit of a history. The company was founded back in 2017. Vince Roman is our CEO. He was a grad student. I think he studied thermal dynamics and some other stuff that I don't even know what it is and can barely pronounce it. But he earned his PhD, and in the process, he came up with this heat pump that's actually able to go into a window like an AC. That started in 2017. 2018, we produced our flagship unit. It caught the eye of the New York City Housing Authority, and the flagship unit is rated for moderate climates, California, those types of climates. It can heat down to about 17 degrees. Again, we caught the eye of the New York City Housing Authority. They came out with their, I think it was Clean Heat for All program, and we applied, and we actually won a part of that bid, and were awarded 10,000 units. So this small startup in California won this NYCHA bid. That put us on the map, fast-tracked our move to a cold climate unit, which we now call our all-weather unit, because obviously you can also operate in warmer climates. So our all-weather unit, and that's basically what I'm talking about here today in terms of where we are with NYCHA and moving forward in more colder climates. So a little bit more about NYCHA. Again, the situation, we talked before about Local Law 97, the challenges that it presents, and obviously, to the credit of New York City and the state, I mean, you talk about walking the walk. So they identify these large buildings that are in obviously poorer communities. They don't have the benefits of air conditioning. They're energy pigs because they're obviously operating on gas and on oil. So they led by example and identified the problem, right? You want to upgrade these buildings. Electrical upgrades are complicated. Refrigerant piping, drilling through walls. Just imagine the complexities. Now, I've been with Gradiant for about 6 months. I actually bid on this project with another company at the time. We proposed a central solution which just didn't work. We knew we had no shot, but we said, hey, it's NYCHA, let's give it a shot. Gradiant had the right solution, and obviously we're able to provide them with these 10,000 units, low cost, climate-friendly option that's very, very user-friendly. And we're in the process of, we just did our first set of installations right after Thanksgiving. Again, we're based in San Francisco, so we're a US-based company. We have a lab. We do all of our design, assembly, finishing, testing in San Francisco. We also have another facility in Los Angeles. So between those two facilities, that's where the majority of our manufacturing is done. However, recently, we won a grant, Department of Defense, like $17, $18 million. Us, along with, I think, 8 other US-based manufacturers, including Johnson Controls. So with this grant, we're actually going to move all of our manufacturing into one facility. On the East Coast, we're looking at potentially Michigan, Detroit area as a finalist, or Ohio. So fully US-based manufacturing, start to finish, in one location on the East Coast. Along with that, we had the opportunity to do a demo in the White House. So this is our CEO here. So I'll tell you a funny story about this. So Vince, he says as he's doing the prep for POTUS, as he's referred to in these types of events, he goes, when POTUS comes out, you have to direct him and tell him where to stand. They said he has a tendency to wander, so you got to tell him where to go. So he's like, this is the most powerful person in the free world, and I got to tell him where to go. So sure enough, Biden comes out and just starts wandering, starts touching stuff. So pretty funny. So I think this photo kind of captures what we're talking about here. So again, as part of this grant, we did this demo with the White House, which was obviously a great opportunity for us and some great exposure. So the unit itself, I'll let the video sort of speak for itself and show just how easy the installation is, and hopefully this works, and we should be good to go. Very simple installation. Comes in 2 pieces. Basically, you open it up like an upside down L. You put the brackets in first. That's 1 piece. Unit opens up, as I mentioned. These 2 plugs secured on the inside, or these 2 prongs rather. 2-person installation. Obviously, walk it over to the window. Grab the handles. It slips on the bracket, goes down almost like a roller coaster sound. Close, put the top piece on. There's insulation at the top and the bottom of the window. You close your window, and that's the installation. And the music is actually included. All right, so let's just.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, yes. Okay, so to the next slide. Not a Mac person.
Maybe it's stuck in the video mode.
There we go. So again, some benefits. I'm just trying to look at my time here. Some standard benefits of us versus a typical mini split. Again, typical. We have a 15-minute installation. No HVAC contractors required. No electrical upgrade required. Now we're looking to partner with contractors. We don't want to leave them out. There's ways. We're looking to do a preventative maintenance program. Obviously, there's some co-op people that work with co-ops here, and co-op board members and residents. I spoke to a co-op board president. She said, I don't want my maintenance people being installed. So we're looking to partner with contractors and have them help out with those installations. But again, you don't need to hire a professional contractor, which is obviously costly. Designed for cold climate. This is our new all-weather 120-volt unit, by the way. 9,000 BTUs of heating and cooling. It's not a resistive heater. It is an AC and a heat pump. Variable window depth. Variable speed, compressor, fan speeds, high, medium, low. Again, the benefits doesn't block your view. You can open and close your window, and the biggest benefit that people seem to appreciate when I speak to them is that it's 120 volts, so there is no electrical upgrade required. And also no service interruptions, if you think about it. Like a lot of these projects, middle of winter, unless it's an emergency, no one wants to shut their boiler down, right, to install a new system. So typically you try to spend money, patchwork, get through the season, and then it's next year. With us, you don't have that issue. I mentioned the refrigerant. Ours is R32, which is, I think, about 25% of the GWP of the next lowest GWP refrigerant, and it's quieter. The condensate is typically an issue with these types of heat pumps. We have this sort of patented atomizer, which basically takes the condensate and turns it into a fine mist. You can see what it looks like here. I'm getting close to my time. IoT device, smart, digital. You can plan events, when to start, when to finish, and specs, which again I could share. So that's it. And one last thing, we are building this to be backnet capable. That's not on this slide, but thank you for your time, and I look forward to answering any questions.
Hey everybody, my name is Haley. I am the community lead at FabScrap. So wonderful to hear from all the rest of the panelists. Super excited to speak to you today. So let's just dive in. So FabScrap, right, we are a pre-consumer textile recycler. It's our mission to end all commercial textile waste. On top of providing a direct waste management service, we aim to be an accessible resource base as well as a hub for creativity and design. So what exactly is textile waste and what are we dealing with, right? So we are in this pre-consumer portion, right? This is all the waste generated by companies, often in the pursuit of a product. In comparison, we have our residential textile waste, right? That's the stuff that you and me create when we grow out of our clothes, when our clothes grow out of style, our bed linens, our rags, all of that type of stuff. So we are focused on the pre-consumer, the commercial side. That being said, residential textile waste is very important, and it can be a really, really good metric to understand the scale of commercial textile waste. So in New York City, residents throw out 200,000 tons of textiles a year, right? That's a really massive amount. That's 52 pounds per resident. So each one of us on average is getting rid of 52 pounds a year. Just to put that in perspective, that is 14 times the weight of the Brooklyn Bridge. So if you can just imagine 14 Brooklyn bridges spanning across the river, that is all the residential textile waste we are just creating as citizens per year. So it's a lot. How does commercial textile waste compare? Right, so commercial textile waste, it's really, really challenging to have an estimate. It's pretty much a gray area, right? Commercial businesses are not required to report on their textile waste. In New York City, we do have the textile waste law, which says that if you are a business and you produce 10% more of your waste as textiles, you are legally obligated to recycle that. That being said, there's about one person enforcing that in the state. It's really challenging to enforce, so it's pretty much unregulated. But we can really understand the scale of residential waste to understand the massive issue that is commercial textile waste. So it's estimated that for every 1 pound of residential textile waste, 40 pounds were upstream, right? So it took 40 pounds of commercial waste to create your 1 pound. So it's a pretty massive problem. Why does this problem exist? For a couple reasons, but one of the big ones is due to the linear design process. It's a little cut off right now. The linear design process, right? We're starting with virgin feedstock. For the most part, we're making our textiles, it's 97% virgin feedstock. It's incredibly resource intensive, right? Then we're making a lot of clothes. We are making more and more textiles on average. We're wearing them less. Right now, we're pretty much on average, it's about 7 times you're wearing a garment before you're putting it into the landfill. So that's not a lot. And then most of that is being incinerated, or it's gonna go sit in the landfill where it'll sit and continue to pollute for a long time. Fab scrap here, we're only focused on this loss in production, right? So we are specifically targeting design waste. And that's actually only 2% of this 12% of loss in production. And although that's a very tiny percentage, that ends up being about 2 billion pounds a year of international design waste. So even though it's a very small part of the problem, it's a really still a significant amount of resources that are getting wasted. But what exactly do we do, right? So we are, again, a pre-consumer textile recycler. We are providing a direct waste management service. We offer to the brands, we are partnered with over 800 different brands. We have a New York City location, and then we also have a Philadelphia location. We only serve those areas. We do not want brands shipping their textiles across the country. That really ends up just offsetting any positive impact we're having on the environment. So the textiles come to us. We give brands these reusable bags. We offer proprietary and non-proprietary sorting and recycling so that they can really one-stop shop, recycle all of their pre-consumer textiles with us. They come back to our warehouse in the Brooklyn Army Terminal. They're tracked. They all have barcodes. They're inputted into a system. And then we have a really wonderful group of volunteers. We have an incredibly strong volunteer network, and they sort through all of this pre-consumer textile waste, right? So all the proprietary waste gets downcycled immediately. It becomes shoddy. Our volunteers sort through the pre-consumer textile waste. So they're saving a lot of stuff. They're saving all of our leather. They're saving all of our fur. They're saving our big pieces of fabric. They're saving all of our garments. All of our, if you pull out a garment, it's in perfect condition, it gets donated. We'll save all of the mutilated sample garments. A lot of sample garments end up being mutilated, either just throughout the design process or on purpose to avoid paying shipping fees. So they're sorting through everything. We have a very small percent that goes back to the landfill. On average, about 6% per year will go back to the landfill. That's mainly staples, hard plastic, or, we can't shred a really tiny piece of leather this big, so unfortunately it's going to go into landfill. There's just not a lot of people willing to buy that. What we can save, we try to save everything we can. About 60% of our fabric is completely reusable. We believe that fabric, and any product that can inherently be used again should be. We don't want to spend the resources to break that down. So lots of stuff go into our store. We have a really wonderful store. We resell our fabric at thrift store prices, right? We want to be incredibly accessible, although there's usually really minimal to no damage with our fabric. And then we hope that our wonderful shoppers will then take their excess cuttings, right, and their excess fabric and recycle it back with us, and we'll start this whole process over again. And again, I think this is a good photo to demonstrate all of what we are. We're much more than just scraps. We do offer beautiful pieces of scraps, but we have yarn cones, we have massive leather pieces. The brands that we work with range from high-end luxury brands to mass producers to small-scale costume houses, right? Broadway production companies that work with us. So it's a really diverse list, and we're able to pull out lots of wonderful things and give them to the public. We donate a lot. We try to give away just as much as we sell. So if you're a volunteer, you get £5 for free with us. We donate to schools. We donate to local nonprofits. We're trying to make sure that everybody can get their hands on this stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have. Super happy to answer any questions if anyone has, and share some more information if needed. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. I didn't know I was green because I just don't shop and just wear the same things all the time. I feel a little better. I'm Mark. I'm a mechanical engineer. I've been a building science kind of geek for the past 23 years, mostly at a company, Stephen Winter Associates. I stepped down as CEO there a couple years ago to co-found Cadence 1.5 with Bomi Jung. I could say a few things about her for this crowd. I will say Bomi drove the $1 billion NYCHA energy efficiency budget while she was there, which included the gradient RFP, and founded GreenHomeNYC 20 years ago or so. And we came together with sort of a shared vision that everybody deserves access to high quality, affordable housing that's resilient to the health impacts of climate change. But because getting, and we're focused on existing multifamily buildings, because getting retrofits and upgrades done in these buildings is so difficult, we've built the sort of operating system for this sector to speed up everything from the scoping and planning to ultimately the kind of execution of this work in a kind of standardized way. This screen is small, but I'll just, for any industry to scale, whether it's IoT, Bluetooth is a standard, consumer devices, BACnet in bigger buildings, we need standards on the retrofit side. Whether you're a lender and trying to deploy funds, you have origination, screening, underwriting, and we're trying to support all those various stages. Whether you're a borrower or doing work in a kind of green loan program, you might use different words for the same scopes, and we're really trying to be the technology that sort of powers all of that. To date, we've only been at this 2 years at this point, starting with a kind of a 20-year industry kind of meandering, but I'd say that what we're really doing consistently is powering decarbonization programs sort of at the community scale. And I'll basically walk through these kind of 4 examples to kind of show you rather than tell you, but basically whether it's the Con Edison multifamily program in partnership with KC3, the New York State Climate Friendly Homes Fund, or sort of these other ones, it is a systematic, programmatic kind of approach that tries to connect all these disparate parties, from building owners to program implementers to contractors to owners, reps, or technical assistance providers. So the first program I'll talk to you about, and I'll toggle into our software in a second, is what Jennifer was mentioning, the Con Edison multifamily program, where they have to allocate tens of millions of dollars in a given year to find the right projects in the right buildings. They're connected to all those buildings via meters, but they don't know what's on the other side of those meters in terms of existing conditions, let alone future state opportunities. So I will go into our software here and show you like one use case from the Con Edison standpoint, and we call our product Momentum, is if you said, listen, I want to run a program with Gradient, right? And I want to find all the affordable buildings in the Bronx that are not too big but not too small, maybe over 25,000 square feet, because that's what the threshold is for local law, and the ones that have the high, the expensive oil kind of heat, we suck up all the public data across the 2 million units of New York City multifamily buildings. These are the 157 buildings in the city that meet those particular parameters. I don't know anything about Seward Ave in the Bronx, but basically we expose the public data. These are the existing conditions, and we generate the one page in the energy audit scope of work that building owners would come to expect from top to bottom, from roof upgrades potentially, windows, equipment, lighting, that sort of thing. Coming from BOMI's background of there's not one perfect scope of work for a building, so we identify multiple scopes of work that kind of vary in kind of cost and complexity. Any one of those can be used to sort of eliminate the various regulatory requirements like Local Law 97, and then they can be customized. So when KC3 uses this for their building owner, you wouldn't know from the public data that they did the roof years ago because no one files that. But maybe they're interested in ventilation work, and they want to look at, instead of messing around with their existing fossil fuel system, they want to look at some packaged heat pump thing like the Gradient. And so you can sort of quickly kind of generate these alternative scope of works to really compress the process for from the planning this from 6 to 9 months to sort of 6 to 9 minutes, and really engage the building owner. So that's kind of one use case. Shifting back to my presentation, and we have multiple users of our tool. We expanded to support the Community Preservation Corp on their $250 million electrification program, Climate Friendly Homes. And so for that, we're supporting really this broader workflow where it's not just about the planning on the front end, but this entire thing from a desk audit, so a technical assistance provider that's part of the program calls up the building, kind of verifies the existing conditions, answers some questions about what's going on in the property, and then ultimately assesses it in terms of the existing conditions. They generate a particular scope of work that meets the program requirements. In this case, it's a heat pump type project where you would need to do the roof and the heat pump work, and then we support the generation of documentation, bid documents that you want to put out to contractors, but you want the data to come back in a certain format. So you say, these are the line items that I want, however you want to break down. You sort of use the software to push this out to whatever list of qualified contractors that you want. You manage the request for information process through that, and then ultimately you get the bids back in apples to apples pricing kind of through the tool. The notion of running a $250 million program where 10 owners reps and 50 contractors are circulating information over multiple years via emails and attachments is just bonkers. So what we're supporting is not just process efficiency for the individual project level, we're allowing the program to capture data and get smarter and better over time. And this is data that's completely inaccessible to the market and falls between the cracks. This owner knows that this system cost this much 3 years ago. This contractor knows that this system, performed this well here. But we can aggregate all that across the whole market, where we know that there's a lot of opportunity to, make better decisions based on that. I'm gonna just quickly, stop the show and tell and just say we're doing an exciting new program. We're gonna launch it publicly with Building Energy Exchange in partnership with KC3 and New York City HPD, funded by NYSERDA, to really offer this to the entire HPD asset managed portfolio. And we're doing some other stuff with really how can we aggregate demand to bring down prices for this work by standardizing everything on the front end. I will maybe close by saying that I think the next few years have to be about more than just upgrading buildings. If you take something like the Inflation Reduction Act, as amazing and unprecedented as it is, if you do the math, nowhere even close to near enough money to do what needs to be done, but it's absolutely enough money to build out the human and process infrastructure so that we can work towards a world where every time someone gets a new mortgage for a building, there's a green retrofit scope that's done as part of it. Every time a piece of equipment breaks, it's replaced with something smarter at end of life, and that there's hundreds of community-based organizations that KC3 is working with that could be sort of part of the solution for this. that's the future we're trying to build. In order to do that, we really need kind of wider input from the whole market. We don't think it's something where it's technology replacing people, but it's really about technology making this more accessible to more people. And so we're really excited to do that this year and beyond with everybody. And we're hiring, shameless plug. So if you know anything about buildings and are interested in kind of learning more about the work we do, please contact me. And thanks for your time.
Start off with any questions, guys? Anyone? Mike?
Yeah, for the first speaker, I guess, what does your daughter think about science now?
Okay, well, 2 of my 3 kids are going into STEM. So the first one is working as a teacher right now. So the other 2 are STEM. So I think, yeah, we encourage them. But yeah, science is important, as we all know, because let's see what the wonderful things it can bring us.
Yeah, and then it's Green Sweater.
I have a question for you. So, first of all, the program sounds amazing. But so is it funded by private donors or by the government or a mix of both?
That's a really great question. So it's been funded in about half the schools through city capital funding process, through borough presidents and city council members have pots of capital money that they can dole out to schools and nonprofits in their districts, and so we help schools apply for that funding. So that's been a really great source. But we also we're very fortunate to get earmarks from Congresswoman Nidhi Velasquez, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, Richie Torres, and Schumer and Gillibrand, and Yvette Clark, to bring the program to 80 schools in the city through federal funding. However, earmarks are no longer allowed under the current House rules for education and healthcare, because it's not allowed right now. So that funding stream is not available currently. So it has been a lot of federal funding. Schools can pay for it. Some schools paid for it out of COVID recovery money. It is a pretty inexpensive program, but we are seeking, as we are all hearing, schools are getting budget cuts and facing just daunting finances. So we're working to diversify funding streams. So to help support our school partnerships. Thank you for asking.
I have one for Haley. I was just curious, pricing the scraps.
Mm-hmm.
Is it by material? Does the price of the scrap change dramatically depending on what it is? And
Yeah.
also, how big is the average sale?
Yeah, so in our storefront, scraps and all of our mendable garments and all of our cuttings, right? A cutting would be a 1 to 3 yard piece. Those are all priced by the pound. So that's how we used to price everything. We've had to scale up for other things. So most of it's priced by the pound, so it's $5 a pound. So you can get a lot for $5 a pound. And then the rest, right, so our leather and our fur is priced by square foot, and all the rest of the fabric on the rolls is priced by fabric type. But even our most expensive fabric is, I think, $15 a yard, right? So if you were to walk into Mood, cut fabric is $60+ a yard. So it's definitely significantly reduced. And again, we do try to give a lot away for free. We have a pay what you wish rack, right? So people can take fabric for whatever price they want. They could take it for nothing. All of that just goes back. All the money that's paid for that goes back for us. But yeah, if you wanted to buy a scrap, you could get it for whatever it was by pound. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, this is from Gradient Air Conditioning. So, a two-part question. One was, with the nitrogen units that you've installed already, are those apartments not getting supplemental heat from gas or other source? And how, have you got any feedback on the performance in the real cold weather, like recently, that sort of stuff?
Great, thanks for the question. First part of your question, we did start with 2 lines, an A line and a B line. Their radiators were ripped out, obviously for the installation, and the gas is on as an emergency backup, but it's not. It's only if something happens. Obviously, it's still sort of I want to say it's a pilot, but it's the early stages. But to answer your question, it's fully operational in terms of being the primary heat source for night shift. Second part of your question was the feedback so far. So far, it's really exceeded expectations. It's funny, I was talking to one of our engineers the other day, and it's like, I actually on a panel tomorrow with someone from night shift. I'm like, from our side, we look at everything. Like if malware, software, if it's not perfect. So I tend to get a little nervous, but from the user experience side, exceed expectations. They're very happy with it. So far, so good. Thank you.
You had your hand raised before, did you learn?
Yes, this is for Haley. You mentioned having fabric shipped like across the country really offset a lot of the progress you make.
Yeah.
Have you considered setting up hubs in like the West Coast or?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. It's definitely something that we want to do, I think, because of the scale that we receive right now, right? So our New York City warehouse, right, on average 7,000 pounds a week. It's just so much that I think it would be great for us to expand. Like, I think if we think about expanding, we think about like Los Angeles, like where's a hub of textiles. I think that's in the future. I think right now with our 2 warehouses, we just receive a lot. So I think our foremost goal is to just get everything in and be as best of a system as we can. It would be wonderful to be in other places, and we definitely need a lot more support for that to happen, I guess I would say.
Yeah.
Yes, I have a question for the speaker at Anthem. I think you mentioned during your presentation that the software collects utility data from the buildings here in New York. I think just curious, just to kind of learn more, how does the software do that? Because I think that some buildings that have a lot of energy providers and they have a ton of meters, and some providers aren't willing to share that data. So just curious to learn more about that process.
Yeah, so for the buildings where we're doing like command and controls, like the demand curve stuff, we're going in and like commissioning those buildings. So we're installing hardware, we're on the backnet, we use backnet devices. So yeah, we have physical like metering systems when we're doing command and controls, but what's exciting and like what's helping us kind of grow into other asset classes is like cloud and API available utility data. So Con Edison Green Button, and then there's some providers that aggregate that data too. So we're working on like different partnerships with them. But yeah, it's definitely a challenge to get that like entire picture.
Yeah.
Another question was, what about the transportation sector? For example, they have a lot of the same interests of hitting the sustainability goals and energy goals, and they have the same plans to do the same. Is there any interest in these?
Yeah, particularly, kind of consistent with our current customer base where they're installing infrastructure for like EV charging. That's definitely an area of interest for us, and kind of, we always think about like, using this model of like backnet connected IoT devices, like what other kinds of usage can we predict and help optimize.
I have a heat pump question. As you know, split systems are typically the most efficient energy suppliers of heating and cooling now. Are you saying that these window units are on the same level of energy efficiency as a typical split system?
Yes, comparable in most of the major indices. And it's a heat pump. It's just installed differently, but it's the same mechanism, just a little smarter in terms, and more climate friendly with the refrigerant. But yes, we can do up to 9,000 units, BTUs of heating and cooling with our unit. We can operate down to -7 degrees. So we're comparable to mini splits. Yes.
Are there different sizes?
Right now there's one.
Capacities?
Right now there's one size. Again, we're a startup. I was actually meeting with Vince, our CEO, the other day. Just we're talking about phase 2, phase 3. We have those things on the drawing board, but the first thing is to get these 10,000 night units out, which we're phasing our installation over the next 4 years, as well as demand for other opportunities. By the way, we're actually, to do a little plug here, we're actually in the pre-order stage now. We're anticipating hitting the market Q3 of next year in time for the heating season. So that's our focus now, is to get these units out. But
So it's not available retail at this point?
at this point, no. The flagship units are, but those aren't rated for cold climate. But these all-weather units will be available for next heating season. But we are, like I said, doing pre-orders now.
Yeah, there's a hand. Lucy, yeah.
Yeah, question for Mark. What reaction have you seen from companies that do audits and typically do the work that you're now automating? And also it'd be interesting to hear what your typical revenues, well, your revenue stream, is that from those programs, or are we looking at different types of revenue streams?
Sure. So yeah, no, I was at one of those firms that did, a few of those audits over the years. I mean, to directly answer your question, we've already lined up 2 folks that are not my old firm as customers who sees us as a force multiplier, because biggest pain I remember at Steven Winters, we couldn't find people to hire to do the work. I also know from hiring and interviewing and seeing people leave over the years, no one wants to do energy audits. People want to make buildings better, right? Like, that was always a means to the end. But if we can, I think we need human beings. Do we need human beings for doing very rote or stuff that basically can by definition be automated, or do we need human beings for project management, customer relationships, looking over the shoulder of a contractor? There is so those charts that in terms of how much new work has to happen. There's so much more work that has to happen that we need to take the very limited and precious human capacity we have and have it be more impactful. And the notion of continuing to generate these energy audits that don't go anywhere, in part because they're not as engaging for the building owners, is something that I think we're starting to get some positive feedback from, not just the programs, but the firms out there doing the more traditional work.
Yeah.
This is also a question for Mark. I know you said you work with affordable housing communities, and many of the community rely on public transportation and are exposed to roadways that trigger asthma, and such as just the MTA in general, the subway systems, they have dirty air and they don't have optimal use of energy. Is there a plan to decarbonize public transportation systems in neighborhoods such as Asthma Alley?
Yeah, so I'm just a buildings guy. I can't, maybe someone else in the panel can speak to the what's being done transportation sector wise. I can say that we are pretty excited to broaden our platform to be not just about efficiency and cost and but basically what are some health attributes that we can kind of track and get into the scopes. And you might want to look at buildings as intervene in certain buildings in certain communities because of other conditions like greater sources of pollution or higher rates of asthma. So we're trying to speed construction. At the end of the day, it's not just about energy efficiency, it's about making buildings kind of healthier for the people that live in them. So that's on the building side, but I'm personally not knowledgeable about anything being done on the transportation side itself.
Yeah.
Question for Abstract. I'm curious, what kind of data are you able to collect from what you receive, and how does that inform what you recycle versus what you sell?
Yeah, we're able to collect a lot of data. So each brand gets a report at the end of the year, right? So we're recording how much they're sending us at the beginning, right? But how much when our volunteers are going through them or when we're downcycling them ourselves, right? How much is being shredded, how much is being saved, how much they're recycling. And then we can tell them, what that relates to, their carbon emissions and how much they're being offset. In terms of what we're being able to sell, we don't get through 7,000 pounds a week, right? So we are selling whatever we are sorting. So there's probably lots of things that will be great to sell that we aren't going to get to until months after they arrive, just because we're a community-based organization. It could be my full-time job to sort for 40 hours a week, and there would be more to be done, right? But we want people to come, sort, have a lovely experience, be hands-on with textiles, feel like they're doing something good, and take away wonderful things. So In terms of how that relates to the data about what we're able to sell, it's a little bit more complicated. We do see that, like with COVID, right, we're getting different types of stuff. And as we've become more popular, definitely we're in more of a phase where people are clearing out their warehouses and sending us more and more and more because they have more to give, they have relationships with us, and maybe you know, if they're sending us like a lot more athleisure, we see, right, after we've kind of come out of the pandemic. But yeah, we're able to track a lot of data. We track a lot of, mainly our data is tracked in tons and pounds and how that relates to carbon emissions, but we're able to tell each brand really specifically how much they're saving year to year, how much is being recycled, how much of the stuff that we get is going to have to go into the landfill, unfortunately. We're hoping that one day we don't have to exist, that one day all these brands have their own recycling systems, right? And so we're hoping that over time, having a report card can help them understand their own consumption habits better. Yeah.
Yeah.
Question for Jennifer. Given that most of your focus is on affordable housing, how do you navigate the split incentive problem that have always happened with affordable housing, where the tenants aren't landowners and so landlords, so they can't really like make decisions about making structural changes to the property? Is your work focused through organizations like NYCHA, or like how do you? I'm just curious.
Yeah, great question. Great question. Yeah, we target a variety of affordable housing, multifamily buildings. That could be like NYCHA properties, right? It's tricky with a program like Amy because even if buildings know they need to get their work done, it's kind of tough speaking at the same level as to a building owner or property manager, because if you come across a building like an HDFC, is comprised of a board where there's members that may have varied opinions, like is it even worth it for our building? Do we need to go through that? Let's say for a building that has to meet local law 97, eventually like they'll have to comply, right? Otherwise they'll just get penalized. It's kind of like if folks, I think it takes a community to build rapport and like trust building with a building staff to really get them to realize like, oh, Amy is something that's an investment for us to get into, because affordable housing buildings, most likely than not, even with the incentives applied, that out-of-pocket cost of their projects is still a lot for them to pay for or bear the burden and paying for. And so we do our best as like the community liaison, outreach liaison, saying like, hey, this is the program processes, these are your potential incentives, here are resources to help you out in terms of like financing, right? If it comes down to me, building staff, whether it be in person or holding introductory calls, really build that rapport, I think is important, and it takes time too. I think energy efficiency programs like Amy, it's metrics, it's like how many buildings are coming through the pipeline, right? But really it's all about like, well, yeah, buildings need to get the work done, but like we really need to get across the point in that it all takes time, from the initial engagement through putting an application. If the building needs an energy audit can take up to 6 months or even a year to complete, right? So it's a strenuous process, but I think a lot of relationship building rapport, making sure tenants and building staff understand the Amy program, because it is a complex program, and the last thing you want to do is intimidate folks or even like hinder them from even moving forward with Amy. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
Yeah.
Brian, have you had any reports from, me. I've seen the horror stories of icicle defrost in cold climates with heat pumps. How do you guys deal with that, or have you looked at it, or have you had reports from NYCHA about it?
Not yet. I mean, some stuff we're monitoring on the back end, but nothing that has gotten to the level that we've gotten a complaint from NYCHA. So.
Oh, Mike, yeah.
Yeah, I guess largely for Jennifer or anybody else that has anything to say about local law 97, but how does energy storage fit into that? And have you seen any interest in that in general, specifically around storage?
Great question. relating to energy storage, I mean, with Amy, really focus on like what energy conservations can a building undertake. Regarding Local Law 97, it's kind of just really targeting and filtering what of the PACMs does a building have to fulfill. I'll pose it to other panelists to answer the question related to energy storage.
You mean, just to clarify, you mean batteries or other types? Yeah, I mean, I think it's, there's some very, very, very complicated, language in Local Law 97 for a building like this one and that one over there that, folks that work in those buildings think they're the whole universe, but they're like 8% of the city-built area. But they're with very, complex, operating schedules and sophisticated operations. I think there's some interesting things you could do with time of day that's in there. I think the thing about electricity is it's getting cleaner, right, over time. So the benefits from a carbon standpoint from shifting it here or there are less and less significant. I think it's just going to be, I think at the end of the day, it needs to be how the utility operates the grid. Like, it's not really a carbon thing as much as it's a prerequisite for a clean grid to have a responsive demand side, and it'll just have to be done as part of that. But, I don't think it's going to be the solution for Local Law 97 compliance as much. And I think it's going to change whether you're in this building or whether you're in the pre-war walk-up over, in the Bronx.
Yeah, okay, please.
I had a question. So do the producers pay you to take their waste away?
Yes, yeah. We do not, yeah, so I think that's a really common misconception, right? They are paying us a fee, right? We believe that it's their job to deal with their waste. So they pay us a fee. The fee is kind of dependent, right, on is it proprietary or not. So if the proprietary is more expensive, again, we want to incentivize brands to be highly critical. We don't want them to send us everything just so they could be downcycled. We want them to say, make really critical choices about why are they holding on to fabric and why are they not. So that's a more expensive process. And then, right, if they drop it off at our warehouse, so we work with a third party that comes in and picks up all the stuff from each warehouse. But again, if they drop it off, it's discounted. And then it's based on the weight of it's either based on the poundage or it's based on if they fill up the bag. So you could ship us like a couple boxes, you could drop off some boxes and that would be per weight, or if you filled up, it's about, depending on the bag, it's about $50 or $60 per bag. So you can fill up a bag, you drop us off, maybe you're a local designer, you drop us off a bag a year. Or maybe you're not a local designer and you're a really big designer and you send us like 25 boxes every 2 weeks. So it's dependent, but yeah, it is not free. And we want them to have a fee for that.
Great. Wrapping up here, maybe one more question. Anyone has any last minute thoughts here? No? Okay, great. All right, well, another round of applause for our speakers. Thank you guys so much. Also, I wanted to say thank you to Fujitsu for hosting us tonight. They're very generous with their space. And also thank you to all the volunteers that came out that helped this event run and all of our events. So thank you guys as well. Thank you.